as we find ourselves and try to discover who we are and what we're going to do in life, you got to do a bit of excavation, hey, and try to work out what you're all about. It's those kind of hard learning experiences that we go through that really help to just make us decide what we don't want to be, so we can be what we want to be, right? So if you're creative and if you're patient, you can retain all of the equity yourself. There's always a way up. They called us up one time and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, that's a weird question. What do you mean by that?" And they said, "You are outselling by a long shot anyone else on the shelf, including Motorola and Jabra. Everything that we did from the product design, things like that really positioned us and made us really sticky with the right crowd." You can build a desire that's really irrational in people because of how awesome what you're doing is. It's really important to make sure that we focus on connecting with our loved ones in our life, because I lost a lot of connection through those years, and it's been a huge year for me this year, trying to reconnect in a really deep emotional way with my wife and my family, and so I was looking for it out there somewhere. It's got to be big, and so it's got to be big and bold and really change people's lives. People I don't even know we're interacting with. I thought that was where the secret sauce was, but it really hasn't been. But it was the fact that I was in survival mode that kept me a little bit. It was in my subconscious, really, just kind of kept me held back. I wasn't emotionally present. The important thing is to not get in too much with the responsibilities. I had tried to do too much myself. Presence and emotional availability. It's not, if it's not been modeled for you, like for me it wasn't. It's really hard to understand what the significance of that is. Significance is really deep fulfilling relationships that those that are around you. Maybe you're working so hard right now and you're seeking purpose in that, because life might feel a bit empty without that purpose. That probably suggests that you're not emotionally available in your life.
Hi, my name's Lincoln, and for over 20 years now, I've been helping people create new brands or helping brands revive themselves. And in all of that time, the thing that I'm really most passionate about and the thing that really gets me excited is just the human experience in all of that. And I'm getting really concerned now in the technical AI-driven world that we live in about the threat of perhaps losing some of that humanity. And so I've started this MissingLinc podcast just to have that human conversation with business people or all walks of life about what is it that we're missing that we might be able to hold on to make sure that we retain that humanity. So I invite you that if you do find something you like, maybe share it with somebody. Not asking you to subscribe, but maybe think about someone you can share this with. Well, here we go. And so I'm really interested in having conversations with people who've been in business, their background, and just that human story that's still really relevant for us today. Yeah. And I thought, hey, Judd's good friend. He's been really successful. So I thought maybe, why don't we start with a bit of your origin story? I mean, you're founder of Xerox, founder of Jaybird, founder of Unlisted. You've had a few things, and now you've got this beautiful farm down in New South Wales. Why don't you give us a bit of an origin story for you, and where did you go from when I knew you at university? Were you interested in, what was it, trying to export kangaroo skins to the United States? If you remember that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. We as we find ourselves and try to discover who we are and what we're going to do in life, you got to do a bit of excavation, hey, and try to work out what you're all about.
Yeah, big time.
And I found even in the highlights of my career, I had a lot of imposter syndrome where I just didn't feel like I belonged or I was really kind of worthy to be in the role I was in. And I think a lot of us deal with that in anything that we do. I was talking to like a therapist recently And I'm like, when you start up your therapy business, you've got to look the part, even though like you might just be having your first customer ever. You've got to look like you've been doing it forever, even though it's your first client. So we all have to wing it and look the right part, and just kind of fake it till we make it. And even with my days at Jaybird, I was really feeling like I was just trying to do my best to belong, and I felt like definitely an imposter. But going back to answer your question, in the university days, actually all I was trying to do at uni was to become an Indonesian translator, mate. I wanted to translate Indonesian because I studied that in high school. I love the people, beautiful language.
Yeah.
For anyone who's been up to Bali or anywhere else in Indo, it's awesome people and languages. It's awesome. And the only uni that would teach Indonesian at the uni level was Griffith, and they had an international business degree. So I'm like, well, I'll go do that. And it turns out I love marketing and I loved some aspects of business, not the numbers, not the accounting stuff. That was tough for me.
Yeah.
And then I started to look into export stuff, like you said, and just kind of seeing what would stick, just throwing stuff on the wall and seeing what would stick. And eventually ended up in some sales, retail sales. And then I worked my way over to America because my wife was over there, well, 2B, and started a life over there and decided to start up a medical record business because that's the first job I got over there. We were scanning in medical records with this little tube scanner back when it was still dial-up. So we would go to a hospital, scan in 50 pages one at a time, and then upload it on dial-up. It was mental. It's so archaic, yet bleeding edge at the time.
Yeah.
And that was around about the year 2000, say. And medical records were entirely paper to that point. We were on the bleeding edge of making everything paperless. And it's still a thing. People request medical records all the time for what it might be an accident or whatever. Insurance companies, lawyers, whatever. And so those are got to get filled. So we did a really good job of automating that as much as we could, digitizing it, making it keyword searchable. And we even facilitated a faster retrieval of the records for the people needing it. That was really great. Got acquired by a competitor, actually the company that I first worked for. It took 6 years later with a different CEO, and they came in and said, hey, look, why don't we just buy you guys? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome.
I bet it did.
Yeah. So that was about 2006. And then I really got into what I was really excited about was to, I was out running and I had the silly wired cord to my iPod at the time, the white Apple iPod, cord to the iPod. And I just thought, this is crazy. Like, why have we got wired headphones? And I go back to my desk and I see a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse. Why can't we make headphones wireless? So I just decided to just throw my head in the ring and be stupid and try it myself.
Where'd you get the guts to do that? I mean, you've gone from one business to another. You said earlier on that you tackled this difficulty of imposter syndrome. Did you find that you were starting to get out of that imposter syndrome as you had some success with the first company, or is it always something that plagued you? Or
no, it actually got even worse, like more so imposter syndrome as I stepped into a consumer electronics brand, going up against the likes of Bose and Sennheiser and Skullcandy and all those guys.
Yeah, right.
It was a real thing for me at that time, and I was pretty shy growing up, and so I still hadn't really spread my wings as a man yet, and I was still feeling that out. I remember actually proposing our company Jaybird to investors, to some what would they have been, angel investors at the time, and we were looking for a couple $100,000. And I remember just turning red during the presentation because I didn't really have my stuff together and I wasn't really that prepared, and I just didn't really feel confident about even investing in myself. And so of course I could just see them, they just looked very uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable, I made them uncomfortable. And it's those kind of hard learning experiences that we go through that really help to just make us decide what we don't want to be so we can be what we want to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, those early moments. And eventually I just decided that I wanted to do it myself anyway. So if you're creative and if you're patient, you can retain all of the equity yourself. There's always a way to do it. And because I just realized also that if I was to get an investor at the time, I would essentially become their employee. And I got into business to do things my way because I had a vision, and I had what I felt was a purpose, and a purpose that was really bestowed on me. Because no one else was doing wireless headphones, I felt that would be amazing. And my very first idea was simply, I'm just going to sell them online. I'll make some wireless headphones for myself, and I'll sell them online to recoup my costs. That was my only goal, so I can have something fun for myself.
So you had enough funding from your previous business, just to pilot, yeah?
Yeah, we had enough funding to get us to the point of producing our first run.
Right.
Yeah. And this was back before, this is 2006-07 era. No iPhone, no Android, and even iPods, the music devices at the time, didn't even have Bluetooth, and we're trying to do wireless. So we have to have this little adapter in the bottom to give the iPod some Bluetooth capability. And no one really trusted the technology back then. It was just something that was really fringe because everyone was wired. You got Beats by Dre that was really rocking at the time. Skull Candy had just come up. So you had all this really strong lifestyle branding around wired headphones, and wireless was quite techy and geeky at the time. There was very strange shapes because the technology hadn't shrunk and miniaturized quite yet. So we were fairly much ahead of the curve. So we hadn't really gotten into some really nice form factors yet, but there were enough people who were interested in bleeding edge stuff that were able to keep us afloat until technology could actually miniaturize and be a lot better.
So how many years are you talking from the time you have your first pilot to the time you're starting to really get into some early majority sort of market share where you're starting to?
It took us, so our first real full year of sales was 2008. Right. And 9 and 10. So those first 3 years, it was like a $1 to $2 million business, which on the big stage of consumer electronics is so tiny. It's just nothing. And around 2011, we got into Best Buy. Best Buy is the biggest retailer on the planet, brick and mortar retailer on the planet for consumer electronics in America. And we were just so excited to get into that store. And the one goal that we had was never lose Best Buy, because if you get a major account in any business, you lose that account, then you've just lost 30% market share and you'll never get that back again. So we just took it incrementally. We decided that year the only thing we were going to focus on was to make Best Buy really happy with Jaybird for the wireless headphones. And they were so stoked with the sell-through. They would actually call us up. They called us up one time and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, that's a weird question. What do you mean by that?" And they said, "You are outselling by a long shot anyone else on the shelf, including Motorola and Jabra and whoever else was in there." And that blew me away. I never knew that. That was cool. I was so excited to hear that. And I think the answer to that question as we met with them and looked at it further was the fact that everything that we did, from the product design to the service to the aesthetics to the waterproofing, the customized sound based on whatever you want, how you want to hear your music, our partnerships with USA Triathlon at the time, things like that really positioned us and made us really sticky with the right crowd, people who were into an active lifestyle, outdoor adventure, sports, fitness. That it really spoke to them in so many different ways, because you compare that to Jabra, super generic and super techy, Motorola, well, kind of, who really cares? And then you got this cool upstart Jaybird, and it's got it's lifetime warranty against sweat and all these other things that really speak to them. So that was really cool. It was really good. And then we got Apple the next year after that.
Yeah, right.
And now we're starting to get some form factors that are really sexy, like really miniaturized, just like wired headphone sizes at this point. This is around about 2012, 13, somewhere in there. And it just took off like crazy. We got our branding sorted, we got our social media sorted, we had a really good team that we were building out, some really great talent on our team, and started to go worldwide. We never really got much traction in Australia until we sold to Logitech in 2016. So we're going back a fair way here. It's almost a decade since this era. But Logitech had the relationship, and then we got into like JV Hi-Fi and some other places as well.
I remember seeing a review of a Jaybird product versus some of the higher end products, and you were still listed in that higher end range. This is going back maybe not even 5 years ago. And people were still listing Jaybird as a higher end product. You were still independent at that point. You weren't tied to anyone. Did you ever imagine that you'd end up producing something? Is that something that you always imagined you'd do? Is this a really high end product, or is that was it a happy accident, or no, we're going for that?
We're going for that, 100%. Tesla has the same strategy. When they came out with their electric cars, they just went for the high end first. The reason is you'll always make money with people who really want your product, like desperately want your product. You can build a desire that's really irrational because of how awesome what you're doing is. We've all felt it. We've all felt an affinity towards a brand that we absolutely love, and it becomes irrational because of the perceived value that it brings to your life. And how awesome the product is. Like you know that if you compare that product to any other competitor, no one else compares, and it becomes the pedestal or go-to product for that industry. That was our goal from the start. I could see wireless coming up as the thing in the future, and I could see Jaybird becoming something like Nike, down the road. I think if we were to continue, I think we would have done something pretty remarkable. I'm not saying that we necessarily would be like Nike today, but I could see us being a pretty legitimate brand. Logitech really struggled, as oftentimes big companies come in and buy little ones, so they lose that entrepreneurial passion, the small team drive and passion, like a SWAT team kind of feel, and it just becomes very just check the box kind of stuff. And when you lose all that, man, all the wind leaves the sails, and you start losing talent really quickly, and then before you know it, you've got a lot of people who really don't know how to drive a startup. They just know how to assist in something that's really well established. And if you're going to take a startup to something that's really well established, it's going to break in that process if you're not really careful along the way. I was really hoping to stick around, but Logitech really didn't want too many cooks in the kitchen. So pretty quickly, I got the sense that they didn't want me around, and so I had to move on.
So is this talking pre or post sale for you with Jaybird?
Post.
Okay.
They made a big deal about us and my team sticking around for at least a couple of years, but when we really hit the ground after post sale, it was a very different story. And the management team who came in didn't want anything to do with our input or anything like that. It was interesting because they really struggled for years, and I really wanted to help. I wish I could have, but no one ever asked for any help. And any time I went by to see them, they never really started the conversation. I just wanted to make myself available, but they didn't really take that up or anything. So that's unfortunate.
I think you touched on something earlier that I was going to ask a question about. You talked about, this idea of innovators and those thought leaders kind of latch on to things early on. They're the ones who, once you find your tribe, and that's your comfort suite, you latch on to it, and that's the same for any brand, as you said. Do you think, though, that an innovator or a thought leader, but in particular an entrepreneur, do you think they're born, or do you think you can create them?
You can create them. I wasn't born that way. I was really unsure of myself. Imposter syndrome. I'm extroverted and introverted, but I would say I'd lean more introverted.
Really?
And so, dealing with lots of people. We had 100 employees by the end of it, and that would exhaust me. I love people, and it also exhausts me. So I need to get back, and my solitude recharges me, right? So that was challenging, and also dealing with different time zones. So I was constantly tired. and stressed because there's a lot of burden and responsibility, and it's really important to make sure that we focus on connecting with our loved ones in our life, because I lost a lot of connection through those years, and it's been a huge year for me this year, trying to reconnect in a really deep emotional way with my wife and my family, and to get to a much richer and fulfilling life because of the really important relationships around me. Because I grew up in a family that we really didn't talk about stuff. And so I learned how to be a bit of an island emotionally, and not connect and talk about. I thought emotions were kind of silly for so many years. You just got to be resilient and tough and get after it, and I think that drove a lot of why I was doing what I was doing, because I was looking for purpose outside of the relationships that were right around me, and trying to look for this fulfillment because I wasn't connecting with people very well. And so I was looking for it out there somewhere. It's got to be big. And so it's got to be big and bold and really change people's lives, people I don't even know or interact with. I thought that was where the secret sauce was. But it really hasn't been. It's been a really exciting journey. I'm so proud of what my team and I were able to do. We were like the first big wireless headphone brand. We were about 30 or 50% market share in the States in those early years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was huge. It was really cooking. Best Buy staff, they were always taking people straight to Jaybird. Apple staff at the Apple stores, straight to Jaybird.
Yeah, wow.
And people really dug it because it was changing their lives. It was reinventing what they thought their workout was, their workout experience or their outdoor adventure. For the first time, they could actually take it wireless. And now we take it all for granted. It's quite commoditized now. The most recent Jaybird buds, they just look like your standard buds, right? Like this. That's the Jaybird logo on there.
Love it.
But it took us a while to get to that. And it was a great journey, and I'm super proud of what we were able to do. It was very rewarding, very fulfilling, and my family got behind it. They all were getting involved whenever they could as well, at trade shows or helping out in the warehouse, whatever it might have been. It was really fun, and we had a great vibe, and people really got behind it and enjoyed the brand experience and the community that we built. So it was rewarding, 100%, very, very rewarding. However, I'd also lost sight of what's most important in life, and that's the people immediately around you, especially family. And I think some of us may be entrepreneurial because we may not be emotionally connective or emotionally available, and so we just drive towards that, something outside of relationships. Or we actually might already be that way inclined and find fulfillment there, but then because of the stress and load and responsibility of becoming an adult and having a family, that might push you towards being an entrepreneur or tied up in some kind of occupation that is very, very demanding as well. And that pulls us away and disconnects us, right? So it's so important. It's been a really big lesson for me recently.
So if you're a startup now and you have learned the lessons that you've learned in the past, how do you now balance the demand of trying to spend all the hours required to get your startup up and going with the really important stuff like the family? How do you balance that?
Yeah, well, nowadays, see, through those times, I was survival mode a lot of the time. Here's a funny story. The year that we were preparing to sell Jaybird to Logitech, so we had been going for a decade by this point. We had been profitable every single year, which is crazy without any investors. Because that's what you have to do. If you've got no money to back you, aside from your small initial capital, then you have to be profitable every year. If you don't, you're out of business. So we had to work out ways, so many creative ways to get it all to work. And in that final year that we were getting ready to sell to Logitech, with the busyness of everything, I didn't know this, but it turns out that we had these taxes that we hadn't paid. And the IRS were headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah. So the IRS was after us, and the state of Utah was after us, and they were threatening to shut down our bank accounts, mate.
Wow.
So that would have ruined everything in the middle of a sale to Logitech.
Absolutely.
Smashed us. So during those months, my controller and I would just get together and we were just ready for anything. We were just like, bring it on. What is coming today? It was really stressful. So it was this huge exit, multi-million-dollar exit, but could have been completely undone and smashed by just the IRS or the state of Utah saying, no, we insist on what we want right now. So maybe it was some divine providence to help us to get over the line there, and it was very stressful. So that's just the example of the amount of stress on top of all the other things that we had, payroll for 100 employees and all of this inventory that we had. We had also bought way too much inventory. Best Buy said it's going to be a huge Christmas. So we really amped up our goals, and we bought what they said plus even more. And then it ended up being a horrible Christmas holiday season. And so we had all this inventory for at least an extra year. And so therefore our cash flow was super tight and all of that. So just survival mode, and 100 households depending on you, and a whole brand to a whole decade of work to protect. So that's really difficult for a lot of us. I mean, that's just one example for me. I'm sure a lot of us have examples where we feel so overwhelmed almost, and so much in survival mode that you just don't feel like you have time for fun, right? The fun side of life, until you get through this next thing, and there's always another thing. So I would say I can only talk in hindsight now, because I never really nailed that skill of having a balanced life when I was at Jaybird, aside from the fact that we spent I would say this, we had a lot of good family time and a lot of good time as a couple, my wife and I. But it was the fact that I was in survival mode that kept me a little bit, it was in my subconscious really, just kind of kept me held back. I wasn't emotionally present. I was present but not so present, and I didn't really realize it at the time. So I had plenty of time, because as an entrepreneur or a business owner or anyone who has some kind of autonomy in what they do, we all have the ability to stop what's going on and go and have a great fun time as a family or with friends or whatever. So there's always that, but being emotionally present was what I didn't really understand, and hadn't never really been modeled for me growing up. And then so I went into family life with the same kind of subconscious modeling, right? So I would say that the important thing is to not get in over your head too much with the responsibilities. I had tried to do too much myself, I would say. I really could, because I felt that I could do it. I had a really supportive wife with Miriam. She was really resilient, and I think that was something that might have helped to create that situation too, because if she was a little more demanding of me, then I would have probably balanced things a little better. But she was so supportive. That was really great. But I would say when you have the resources, you really need to balance things out, get some help. And perhaps funding is the answer for that as well. But that certainly does add a lot of stress and pressure when someone else is breathing down your neck and saying, you got to hit your goals that you told me you were going to hit 3 months ago or 6 months ago. Whereas if it's just yourself, it takes all that pressure away, and you understand that there's been a product launch that's been delayed several months, and you're okay with that, but an investor may not be. So it's about finding that right balance of responsibility and workload, and try to make sure that you're emotionally present. Emotional presence and emotional availability. It's not, if it's not been modeled for you, like for me it wasn't, it's really hard to understand what the significance of that could be. And significance is really deep, fulfilling relationships, with those that are around you, because you're talking and connecting on a level that, as maybe you're working so hard right now and you're seeking purpose in that, because life might feel a little bit empty without that purpose. That probably suggests that you're not emotionally available in your life. And there's a lot of stuff online nowadays, podcasts and YouTube and everything, that'll talk about what that means. But it brings so much more fulfillment when you're engaging with the people that you love in another way. Like I look at your family, Lincoln, and I'd say that you're an emotionally available family, like big time. And I have so much respect for that.
Well, I think we're all in the same boat, mate, and I think we all have those struggles, and I think that's really good. Maybe even it's a great calculus sort of scenario where I go, if I'm not connected to my family, if I'm not connected emotionally, then maybe there's a lack of purpose, and vice versa. If I'm lacking purpose right now, does that mean I'm not emotionally available? I think that's a great little scenario I think we can rerun, and maybe even use as a personal life metric, I think so you sell Jaybird, you move into this phase of your life where you're now really focusing on family. You've got this beautiful farm down in New South Wales where you have a bit more time to spend with family. You do a lot of travel between here and the States, coming back every year to work on the farm. What's next for Judd? What's next for the next few years? And is it more time with family, or is there more things for Judd the entrepreneur to come up, or what's on the horizon?
Yeah, well, there's always family, of course. That's number one. Someone told me that family's the greatest treasure. It's the greatest measure of wealth, right? It's really, really important. And for professionally though, the farm is kind of the end game for us. It's just it represents independence, especially with the uncertainty of the times we live in. When we started the farm 2016, after having sold Jaybird, it was a real out there kind of concept because everything just seems so normal. And obviously 2020 and onward, we can see things are a lot less stable than we had thought. And we've even got right now a war brewing, possibly a world war. So having the independence is to be able to just get away and have your own food and water and power and diesel, and grow food if you want, have cattle, have chickens, have a little veggie garden. Like, all of that is so great considering all the things that we've seen flare their head up. And most people would still kind of write it off as, oh, that's a bit extreme, but I think it's wonderful to have that level of peace of mind. So there's that, but also trading crypto is really becoming exciting. We've got some great models, meaning a way of trading certain financial assets that I've been working on a lot recently to automate everything. Smaller timeframes, larger timeframes. And it's a great, because crypto is a complete gamble. Like, you throw your money in there and who knows what's going to happen next. And I was praying the other day, and instead of praying, help me to understand the market so I can capitalize on it, I actually said something. I said, I'm so grateful that we have a financial instrument these days that moves so much and it's an opportunity to create so much wealth because it moves so much. Like, you've got some of these coins that'll move 50%, even 100% in a month. And if you know how to capitalize on that, you can change your life. And you can put yourself in a position of financial independence where you can actually have the liberty and the independence that you want away from all those dependencies that you might be concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a great tool, man. And
so we're talking unlisted? Is this
unlisted? Yes. And also some stuff I'm doing on the side as well, because unlisted can only trade so many cryptocurrencies, mostly the core ones like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and they're pretty good. But there's also some wonderful opportunities out there in other newer altcoins as well. And we don't trade that in unlisted because they're a bit more risky. But I'm developing models around some other things on the side that I may also give access to people as well. Like, you can trade it on an exchange, and some of those exchanges allow you to allow other people just to copy your account. So that's another way to do it too.
Yeah. So it sounds like this really lovely idea of we all pitch for the stars, and we all just want financial freedom. That's where we start, right? I want to be able to have enough for my family. I want to be able to have time with my family. That's kind of where we all start, and sometimes we get off the track of doing that. It sounds like what you've been able to do is really achieve that and not lose sight of it. and that family's important. We've got this farm now, and it's kind of a home base, and it represents this idea of family and security and home, and I think it's really important that we don't lose sight of that in all our endeavors, our startups, our entrepreneurships, our whatever they are, that we're doing it for a purpose, and purpose is powerful, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I think you struck on a lot of that today. Hey, look, mate, I'm not going to keep you much longer. Is there a final message you'd love to give anyone who's starting up a business in 2024? What would be the one thing that you'd love to leave with them as to what they could do to help make them successful?
Yeah. A lot of it is perseverance, and don't spend more than you're earning. That's how we got to be profitable for 10 years straight without any investors. Is just work out creative ways to get through. It's really challenging at times, but if you couple that with a vision for your dream and you stick at it, then you really can work through that. And if you're a person of faith, lean on the Lord, and He will guide you and get you through those tough, narrow passes. He won't make it easy necessarily, but He'll strengthen you and give you the resources when you need them. You'll still feel the pinch, but you'll be able to get through if that's your dream. And I love the Denzel Washington quote. He says that really, really strong burning desire that's in your heart, he says that's God's promise to you, that whatever that dream is that you're chasing, that's yours alone. And no one else will share that dream or vision because it's yours. It's yours to have. And when you feel it that strong, you just know it's what you got to do. That's what I always felt about everything that I've always ever done. When you can lock into that, when you have a bit of purpose and calling to what you're about, it gives you that extra push that you need in those narrow passes to push through and be able to be creative and have that self-belief in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, mate. That's really wise words. I think all of us can take that into this, not just this next year, this next part of our life, but through everything. Love your faith, brother. We need to reconnect again soon. And for everyone who's listening and watching to this, I'm sure there's something that you can take away and implement as part of your next strategy. Thanks again, mate, and we'll chat soon.